In this video, the scope is going to be on setting up your environment to use our DarkShield API, which is hosted on a container. I'm going to be bypassing all the information that pertains to the masking job itself, since we have other tutorial videos that go into greater detail on the topic. But this is just a short video just to make sure this process of setting up your environment is as smooth as possible. So here we're on the CoSort account and in the repository for DarkShield. Really, the only difference that you need for a DarkShield that's going to be inside of a container is the license. The license needs to be a floating license, since the traditional one is actually linked to the host name. So just make sure that you have a floating license in order to proceed to the next step. How to run the application is down here below. The two arguments that you see here are simply the port mapping, because the API is constantly listening on 8959, and we need to map that port so then it can actually receive any requests. And then since we're talking about the floating license, we need to then turn around and copy that floating license into the container itself. And the tag down here just relates to the version. So at the time of recording, version 6 is the latest version of DarkShield. Just in case, here is the command to pull the actual image. Now I'm going to minimize this. For others, there is the Docker desktop, so if you want a GUI front end to be able to do everything, you can use that. Personally, I find the terminal just to be a lot easier and straightforward. So that's what I'm going to be doing in this example. And this is the same command that we just saw earlier to run the container. The only thing is that I had to change was the actual path, so then it points to where I have my floating license on my local PC, so that I can copy it over to the container once it's spawned up and running. And I'm running version 6. So I'm going to just hit enter. And now we can see that the DarkShield API is up and running. And if we come over here to follow link, here we can see the Swagger spec on information on the endpoints. Minimize this. So now that we know that the Docker is up and running, and just to double check, you can go on the GUI for Docker desktop, and here we can see the image DarkShield 6 up and running. Now all we need to do is just right click on this .dsc file and hit run as, search a mask job, or hit OK. And since we ran it inside of Visual Studio Code, we can see it here in the terminal that it has received its request, and now it's starting to mask a table. As you can see, there was no special configurations needed. There's no additional port opening or anything like that to be able to get these jobs up and running. So the same thing would be for any of our other sources that are supported, like files, NoSQL. The only thing when it comes to the sources that use a JDBC connection, so like SQL Server, there is a jar file. Now, there is no jars automatically built into the container, since users could have a number of needs for different jars and different jar versions. So it's up to user to provide the jar that they're going to be using to connect to their database. But there are times where when we run the job, the jar is not actually copied over into the container and might run into some issues. If that does happen, what you will see is that we weren't able to connect, and it would actually specify that could not find the jar specified for the source. That is a very simple fix. All we would have to do is run this command. This is docker cp, so it's going to copy, and we apply the path to the jar that we're going to be using for the JDBC connection, the container ID, so we know which container we need to copy the jar into, and then this specific path, which is going to be inside the lib folder of DarkShield. Once you have that done, then we can just rerun the job, and your connection should be up and all ready to go. So that is a very simple overview process of getting our image, starting up the container, and then running the job. If you need any additional help or more information, please feel free to reach us. Thank you.